I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Let's get it out of the way. Assassin's Creed Origins is easily the best in the series since Black Flag. But it's still an Assassin's Creed game. And even after taking a year off from the annual release cycle, Ubisoft has delivered what feels like a better looking, slightly refined version of the same game it's been releasing for 10 years now. Graphically, Origins is a major leap forward in terms of sheer vibrancy. While the graphics may not quite be as jaw-dropping as some have said, and certainly not as refined as, for example, Horizon Zero Dawn, Origins is easily the most striking visually in the series, which, given the very drab and frankly dull palettes of the last few games, may not seem like much of a compliment, but the lush color palette brings the romance of ancient Egypt alive in a way that can be genuinely breathtaking, especially when viewing the landscape from one of the many eagle viewpoints. Even riding across empty desert inspired more than a little euphoria during my playthrough. And with the 4K and HDR enhancements scheduled for the Xbox, Origins could potentially be a showcase title for the Xbox One X this season. The graphics, however, as with every Ubisoft game ever made, are marred by glitches, some big, some small, all irritating and most inexcusable. The worst I've encountered so far have to be the moments when the ground loses its textures entirely for extended periods of time. The textures flicker on and off, more off than on, leading to some hilarious moments where the players are trudging across patches of gray. Animations frequently become stuck in a loop, leading to guards walking constantly into walls, or, just floating midair in the despairing posture of their death fall. I haven't experienced any crashes in roughly 40 hours of gameplay, nor have I fallen through the ground, which is definitely good, but the visual problems do speak to a larger issue, the rough, unpolished nature of so much of the game. Take the controls, for example. Climbing a wall should be a straightforward affair. Push the control stick in the direction you want to go, and Bayek, the protagonist, should go in that direction. Unfortunately, climbing is too often a chore because your controller input is merely a suggestion, really just a guideline. And if Bayek is feeling difficult, as in most of the game, he may move in a slightly different direction, may refuse to round a corner, or may even move backwards. I'm not kidding. Combat is fast, and though it is more skill-based than previous games, Bayek's movement is way too clunky, given how fluid Ubisoft clearly wants the combat to feel. And for some reason, the target lock function has a weird mind of its own. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it switches according to my wishes, sometimes not so much. It's not that the climbing or the combat are bad exactly, it's that they just aren't as good as they should be, especially after, 9 other games in the franchise. Or consider the game's opening, a deplorably clunky 20 minutes that gives you nothing in the way of context before thrusting you into a "you killed my son, prepare to die" level duel. Then a tedious trek out of a painfully uninspired temple through the dullest area of the dullest region of the game and into a series of tutorials that felt like the game didn't simply want to hold my hand, it wanted to play the game itself for me. But once you get past that opening, really once you get about an hour or so into the game, things do open up considerably and the game actually becomes fun. While I understand starting after Bayek has been set onto the path of revenge, why couldn't we have started after the introduction, after the first target has been killed? Better yet, why not start at the end of Act 1, so as to avoid both the terribly, terribly bad introduction and the jarring extended flashback sequence that seems shoehorned in simply because they forgot to fill in the backstory earlier. Admittedly, all open-world games suffer from issues with pacing, but Ubisoft seems to have thrown all consideration of pacing out the window here, and it's difficult to understand exactly why. The story, simple and cliché as it may be, is actually pretty decent, and at times even engaging. But long stretches of nothing punctuated with walk-on, walk-off major villains destroy any sense that Bayek's actions are more than just isolated missions, and make cutscenes that should be dramatically satisfying feel a bit silly in their seriousness. Of course, the game is not exactly served well by its characters. Bayek, as the protagonist, is likable enough, though he really doesn't stand out in any way from his predecessors. Although he swaggers through the game, he lacks the charm of, say, Ezio or Edward Kenway, both of whom struck a fine balance between charm and swagger. Aya, Bayek's wife, is even less interesting, a woman who seems hell-bent on killing people and then having sex. Seriously, I love that she's not all weepy, but did they have to make her a bloodthirsty sex maniac? Even less excusable is the game's treatment of Cleopatra, once again following the popular culture and ignoring history by turning the Queen of the Nile into a lewd woman of no great intelligence. Trust me, I loathe Cleopatra Philopator as the single worst woman in history, and even I am bothered by how poorly drawn this character is. But here's the rub. As rough as much of this game is, and rough it is, I'm enjoying the hell out of Origins. There is plenty to actually do, not merely collect. And activities are varied enough that if you decide you need some time away from the main storyline and just want to go exploring, you can do that. And you will find something enjoyable to occupy your time. Whether it's exploring tombs, killing animals, looting camps, just doing side quests. Yes, there is a lot of repetition, but because of how easy it is to simply choose something else to do and how enjoyable that something else will be, the repetition never becomes a problem, not the way it does in so many other open world games. Side missions vary from fairly basic to well-written and engaging, which is a real improvement over previous games in the franchise, and certainly over something like Horizon Zero Dawn. Though nothing in Origins is as good as the Bloody Baron story from Witcher 3, which, let's face it, will be the yardstick against which open world questlines are compared for years to come. Bottom line, while I won't go so far as to say Assassin's Creed Origins is the best in the franchise, I will say it is the best since Black Flag. And as loath as I am to say it, it is a return to form that actually has me excited for the future of the franchise in a way that I haven't been for years. Should you buy it? If you're a fan of this series, if you like the early games, yes. If you just want something that's going to occupy a hell of a lot of your time, yes, buy this. I got this at the same time I got Shadow of War. I played Shadow of War for a couple days. I really don't like it. I popped this one in, and I've wasted a lot of hours in this one already, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I don't regret any of my time spent with Assassin's Creed Origins.
Pomegranate.